Hello everybody, welcome back to the Spoked Wheel YouTube channel. We are back today with episode 28 of our Andy Schleck Pro Cyclist Mode series on PCM 2020, which means we have reached the start of the Tour de France. Our big goal at the start of this series, and now, 27 episodes later, we've finally reached it in our third season with Andy Schleck. But before we get into that race, I just wanted to quickly cover what we've accomplished since winning the Giro d'Italia in our first Grand Tour. As you can see, we won the Tour de Suisse, our tune-up race for the Tour de France. We also won the best climbers classification in that race and picked up a stage win as well there on stage 6. We also had the national championships, and these two races went extremely well for us. We finished second in the ITT, only behind Bob Jungels, and then finally on our third try, we won the National Road Race Championships. So we will be wearing the jersey in the Tour de France, which is very cool. I didn't commentate over this race, but I did record it, so here's a brief clip of us winning the Nationals, finally on our third attempt of trying to do so. Right, so into the final 6 kilometers, you can see that we were in a 2-man group with Ben Gaster. Into 5 kilometers to go, we decided to launch one last attack to try and prevent the race from coming down to a sprint as it has in the past 2 years. And basically just into this descent, we went all out, pedal to the metal, 99 effort. He got real close to catching up there on that last little turn there on the descent, but we were able to hold the gap pretty steady at around 10 seconds. And then into the last kilometer and a half, we opened up the sprint nice and early. Into the finishing straight, looked back, but he wasn't gaining on us, so we were able to cross the line and take the win with Andy Schleck. Alright, so now that we've taken care of that housekeeping and recap stuff, let's look ahead to the Tour de France. This race is why we started this series. It was the race that Andy tried to win so often in his career. And it's pretty much the goal that we set out to accomplish at the start of the series, so it's great to finally be here. I mentioned in a past video that there are 9 mountain stages on this year's route, which means if you do 3 stages per video, that's 3 videos. So in this first video of the Tour de France, we will be playing stages 7, 8, and 9, these early mountain stages. So there are quite a few stages before we get into those, but most of them are flat, a few hilly stages. This one could have an impact on the GC for sure, but the other ones I think are mostly going to be sprint stages. Maybe this one will be more for the punchers, but once we get sort of into that first weekend here with stages 7, 8, and 9 is when the GC battle will really pick up. So that's when we will get into things for the first stages that we're going to record with Andy Schleck. And hopefully at that point, we will be in a decent place to try and move up and contend for the GC. Alright, we're into stage 7 at the 2022 Tour de France. I want to start just by giving a quick overview of where things stand on the GC through 6 stages. So, as you can see, we're in a really nice spot already. We're in second place on GC, 17 seconds behind the race leader, Julian Alaphilippe. Honestly, this is a better spot than I thought we'd be at this point in the race. We were able to use the 2 hilly stages in the race so far to get a couple bonus seconds, couple podium places on the stage, and that has helped elevate us up the standings for sure. We're also currently leading the King of the Mountains classification, so that's the jersey that we're currently wearing. We are in the polka dots. So the only downside of all that is that we're not wearing the nice national championships jersey of Luxembourg that we just won, because we're in a distinctive jersey instead. But hopefully at some point in the race we'll get to throw that on for a couple of stages in the mountains, because that would be a cool touch. But if we're unable to do so because we're leading the race, I think that's a sacrifice that I'd be willing to make. As you saw, it's Alaphilippe and Nairo Quintana as well, who are alongside us on the podium at this point in the race. other big challengers, Egan Bernal, Primoz Roglic, Tadej Pogacar, have already lost at least a minute of time, each of them. So we're in a really, really good spot compared to the guys who, coming in, I thought would be our biggest rivals. And today's stage is another chance to see how well we're going in comparison to them. The big Cat 1 climb of the Col d'Aspin precedes a descent into the finish here, so it's a good chance to attack and then for the climbers to try and keep their advantage into that little finishing kicker, I guess you could call it. It looks like it goes back uphill towards the line. So it's a potential one where the stage win is probably up for grabs amongst the GC guys, so we're going to do our best to try and be in the first group of riders that goes over the top of that Category 1 climb, and then we'll see whether or not we can fight for the stage win against whoever else is left with us at that point in the race. We are just hitting the slopes of the Col d'Aspin now. It's an 11.9 kilometer climb. The breakaway of 7 riders has 3.5 minutes, so it kind of looks like the breakaway might be contesting today's stage win, but we'll see just how quick the tempo on this climb is and how seriously the GC contenders want to take it early in the race. But I think we can mostly afford to respond to moves today, given that we already have a pretty good spot that we're sitting in on GC, and then maybe if we're in a good spot, try and attack up over the top to get a little bit more time on some of our biggest rivals. But I think it will all depend on how the other teams play it. Right now it's Jumbo-Visma with Mike Tennyson and then Mikel Landa ready to work for Primoz Roglic, but there's an early move from Nairo Quintana, which we definitely have to respond to, given that he is just behind us on GC. So we'll try and follow this move here. Yates as well going for it, and at this point I think that's a good strategy for us to just sort of respond to those moves, and then we'll see what happens more closer to the top. But once again, the moves are coming here from the climbers, so the answer to my question about how the GC riders would approach this climb is very aggressively. We've now got Wout van Aert riding on the front, presumably for Roglic, although I don't see him at the moment, but we just want to try and ride as steadily as we can and save our energy and hopefully be in a spot where we can attack up over the top of this climb. With under 2.5 kilometers to the top, we're responding to a big move from Primoz Roglic here. Looks like Egan Bernal is trying to come across as well. I hope we have enough energy to hang on to Roglic's wheel before the top. We're still outside of a kilometer to go to the top here, but we got a group of 9 riders. It's all sort of coming back together. I think we're just going to ride steadily here. No real need to attack, and we are actually dropping people here as well, so I'm just going to leave it on 75 effort up over the top, and then we'll see what the other riders want to do. Let's see if they want to relay with us in the descent, but we've slimmed the group down to 11 riders. Looks like Roglic, Bernal, Godot, Quintana, Guillaume Martin, Danny Martinez, amongst other riders are here as well. So it's really the who's who of the GC contenders at this year's race. We need to use our energy gel for the sprint here. We do have to remember that it kicks back up towards the line. Not too steep, but steep enough that it will definitely make an impact. So let's try and lead into that sort of uphill final kilometer or so. Roglic immediately is going for it. We're going to try and follow him. And now let's make our move to see if we can't come around for the stage win. Doesn't look like it's going to happen this time. Looks like Roglic is going to hang on just ahead of Bernal for the stage win, with ourselves and Quintana battling it out for third. We'll take third in a few more bonus seconds. Quintana fourth, David Gaudu fifth. And just about everyone is here. The only name that's missing, I think, is Tadej Pogacar, so not too much time gained or lost on the stage today. Well, it seems like Tadej Pogacar was not the only major rider missing from that group that we finished with at the end of yesterday's stage, because Julian Alaphilippe was also not there, which means that as the second place rider going into yesterday's stage, we have moved into the overall lead and inherited the yellow jersey at the 2022 Tour de France. This is awesome news for sure. A little bit earlier in the race than I would have anticipated, but we've gotten off to a really good start at this race. So we don't have the strongest team in the race by any means. Jumbo-Visma, I think, probably would be my pick for that award at this point in the race, but we will do our best to defend the jersey. We have help in the climbs. Matteo Trentin has been very strong all around, so we'll do our best and hope that our teammates also do their best to help Andy Schleck defend the jersey and hopefully keep it all the way to Paris. But we're back in the mountains with stage 8 here. We've got the Col de Tourmalet HC climb early on in the stage, and then the final Cat 1 climb is the Col de Parizord, so a couple of well-known climbs on the menu for today's stage. There's a lot of climbing, but it sort of strikes me as the type of stage that might finish like yesterday did, with a reduced group of GC contenders given the long descent towards the finish. So I think this is another one where we can afford to ride a little bit defensively and just try and make sure that we're in the first group that crosses the line so that we don't lose any time besides maybe a few bonus seconds to any of our major rivals in the race. We've made it up over the top of the penultimate climb of the day. We're on the descent towards the Parizord now. We're rather isolated as the only CCC rider in a peloton of 33 riders, so that's a little bit concerning that none of our climbing domestiques were able to make it to this point in the race with us, but I'm hoping that we're strong enough to be able to make up for that. We're just dropping back to grab a water bottle right now, so we're ready for the final climb. But I am noticing just how strong Jumbo-Visma is, because I didn't realize this at first, but they have Leonard Kamna on their team as well as Mikel Landa, so Roglic has all sorts of climbing help with Dumoulin, Kamna, and Landa as well. So they're going to be tough to beat, but we are starting with a nice advantage of about 50 seconds on Roglic right now, I think. We're now on to the Col de Parizord as well. Like I said at the start of the stage, my main priority is just sort of making sure that we're in the first group that goes up over the top of this climb, so I'm not really looking to go on the attack in a big way today, but more so just trying to make sure that we keep all our major rivals in check on the climb. 1 kilometer to go to the top of the Parizord. I think we might as well attack here and go on the offensive a little bit to split up this group of favorites a little bit more. And immediately it's down to about 8 riders, so let's just put on the effort cursor and ride up over the top, get the KOM points, and now we'll, I guess, relay on the descent and kind of see whether or not the riders who got dropped are able to make it back to this front group. Inside of 5 kilometers to go, we still have about a 30-second gap on the group of 10 riders behind us, so it looks like it's going to be this group of 8 that's going to contest the stage win here. It's downhill pretty much all the way to the line, so we have to start our sprint a little bit earlier than we otherwise would. We're definitely not the best sprinter in this group, but the fact that we're sprinting from the front maybe will give us a little bit of an advantage. Here we go into the final straight. Looks like Martinez, Bardet, and Pinot are going to be the first 3. Danny Martinez takes it on the line ahead of Pinot and Bardet. Pogačar 4th, and we get 5th with Andy Schleck. But another very successful day in that we didn't really lose time to anyone, and we actually gained time on Nairo Quintana, who is our closest rival at the start of the day. We are back into the mountains for stage 9 here at the Tour de France, and I think today will be much more of an opportunity for there to be big time gaps among the general classification favorites than yesterday was, given that it's a mountaintop finish and there's climbing from the gun pretty much. I think today is an important day for sure. So the 4 riders that we're going to need to watch most carefully are Nairo Quintana, Egan Bernal, Primož Roglic, and Danny Martinez. They're the 4 guys who are inside of a minute behind us at this point in the race, so we need to not only watch them, but look to gain time on them if possible as well. But I think it's pretty much going to come down to the final climb to the finish. The first few climbs will certainly play a role, but I doubt anyone will really attack on them, so we're just going to stay on guard as much as possible and try and gain time on the guys we need to gain time on the final climb. We have reached the final climb up to the finish on stage 9 of the Tour de France. It doesn't really get serious and kick up and get steep for a little bit longer, so I won't really be expecting any action until then, but we do want to be careful once we reach that point, because there were a few attacks on that last Category 1 climb of the day. Yates attacked, and some of the big names like Bernal and Martinez were very quick to respond, so we got to be on our guard here as we approach the steeper sections of this climb. We're inside of 5 kilometers to go on the stage now. We've had no attacks from the GC riders yet, but we have had Jumbo-Visma setting a pretty fierce tempo with Landa, Van Aert, Dumoulin, and Leonard Kemna as well. And there goes the big move from Primoz Roglic. My next sentence was going to be that no attacks yet, but I'm expecting one to come soon from Roglic. So Roglic goes. It's a group of 5 here. Pogačar here as well, Bernal and Martinez. So maybe the 5 strongest climbers in the race, to be honest with you. We're content to just kind of hang out here and try and stay in this group. As we approach the final 2 kilometers, Pogačar has the most ground to make up, so he's riding at the front and setting a pretty stiff tempo as well. Martinez trailed off the back from that riding here. Looks like Roglic is dropped as well. We're going to sprint for it. Come by Tadej Pogačar in the last few hundred meters, to take our first stage win at this tour with Andy Schleck. That is a big win because we'll get 10 bonus seconds plus whatever else we gained on the riders like Martinez and Roglic. Quintana as well, nowhere to be seen, so we're gaining big time on him. That's a really successful stage in the mountains. It's important that we keep padding our advantage steadily as we go on, because there are a few time trials later on in the race which will favor riders like Roglic, for example, so I'm really happy that we were able to gain more time today. Alright, so this is where things stand after 9 stages at the Tour, which is where we're going to stop things for today's video. As you can see, Bernal is in second, 1 minute and 21 seconds down. Roglic in third, 1:33 down, and then Danny Martinez of EF is the only other rider within 2 minutes to the race leader, Andy Schleck. I think we're in a really great position right now. Obviously, we wouldn't be in the race lead if we weren't, but it's important to remember that a lot can still change throughout the rest of the race. There are a couple of time trials. Our secondary stats are probably lower than a lot of these other riders, so towards the end of things, recovery and stamina and resistance and things like that might start to play more of a role, but for now, I think we have to be very happy with where we're sitting on the GC after 9 stages. So I think we've done a really nice job using our climbing ability to take time when we can so far. So thanks to everyone who has tuned in for the video. I appreciate the support as always. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you next time with the next installment of the Tour de France.